there, and welcome back to Utility Sports. In today's video, we are going to be covering Donovan Mitchell Trade Destinations. But before we get into it, hit that subscribe button if you are new to the channel. You don't want to miss out on any of this great NBA content. Now, kind of looking and evaluating around the league, what does Donovan Mitchell command? What's the trade packages? What teams are interested? Who can afford them? And we're going to go through some potential teams that very well could make the money work and also have some of the assets to complete a transaction for Donovan Mitchell. I'm going to start with the clear and obvious one, which is the Miami Heat. They have quite a bit to offer from the standpoint of some interesting guys that could fit into, the Jazz's future plans. One of them being Tyler Hero. Duncan Robinson is another player that would have to be floated out there in terms of, trying to make that money work. They'd also have to probably take Kyle Lowry as well in that deal. Nikola Jovic, another name to watch in that potential trade rumor. And then finally, what is that collection of picks going to look like? I think you're kind of thinking probably along the lines of 3 first-round draft choices, which I think the Miami Heat feel that they're very, very close to being in true contention. So trading for Donovan Mitchell, putting him with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, obviously at the expense of a really, really young, promising player in Tyler Hero, I think that is a realistic outcome for the Miami Heat. I think for the Utah Jazz, it gives you another player to really build around. Tyler Hero's role would further expand. He would be the focal point of that team moving forward. They'd have obviously some more first-round draft pick assets. And that's one that you can really kind of sell yourself on if you are a fan of the Utah Jazz. Obviously, trading Donovan Mitchell is not ideal, but looking at the current construction of the roster, what is this team? What are they going to be if they just keep, Donovan Mitchell around? So I think the Miami Heat is one that has been sizzling hot on the rumor mill. I think it's a very, very possible outcome for the franchise. So that is one we're going to have to kind of keep our eye on. Once again, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Nikola Jovic, maybe Yurt 7 could be thrown in there. There's a couple of other guys that they can work into the deal to try to make it work. Kyle Lowry is another one money-wise, but it's really going to come down to, is that exactly what the Miami Heat are willing to do and what the Utah Jazz are also willing to do. Now, the next team to kind of keep in mind here is a team that obviously plays in a huge market in the New York Knicks. Now, they do have some interesting pieces that they could move in a potential deal. RJ Barrett being the big one here. There's been many rumors about Cam Reddish. Evan Fournier is another name that we have to continue to watch in terms of trying to make that money work. Obi Toppin's name has been kind of thrown around a little bit in terms of, potentially using him as a trade piece to acquire another star. So looking at that, when you kind of consider where the New York Knicks are at, I think that they're in need of a guy like Donovan Mitchell. How much does it move the needle for this team with what they're having to give up? I don't really know the answer to that. But I think the New York Knicks, with the collection of players I just named, plus 4 first-round picks, would be pretty enticing to a team, obviously like the Utah Jazz, which are most certainly rebuilding. Another team I would like to bring up, and this is one that might be slightly controversial, not so much thought of, but I have the Brooklyn Nets, and the Brooklyn Nets here have a big trade ship in Ben Simmons. Now, I know his stock is significantly lower than it was a couple of seasons ago. With him not playing, not being available, that's made it very, very tough for people to see him as a true asset. But if you're looking to acquire a player that very well could be, a top tier player in terms of the trade market standpoint, Ben Simmons is one of those guys that you want to buy a little lower on. Maybe they have to give up 2 firsts in the process. Day'Ron Sharpe is another, potential asset being thrown in there. There's a couple of players that you can try to make this work. Ben Simmons' contract makes it much easier for that money to work, and it really kind of depends how it plays out in Brooklyn. We don't know the results of that just yet. I'm still kind of waiting on Kevin Durant and Kyrie and some of that news to break, which it hasn't yet at the time of recording this video, but very well could be on the horizon. So, maybe Donovan Mitchell makes some sense for the Brooklyn Nets. They have some tradable contracts. They have a couple of assets. So they are definitely on my radar for Donovan Mitchell. I think when you look at Ben Simmons, that's a definitely a guy that very well could move once again, or maybe Brooklyn just decides to go ahead, go their separate ways with Katie and Kyrie. Trade them, accumulate a ton of assets, and then kind of move forward from there. The next team is the Charlotte Hornets, and the Charlotte Hornets had a little bit of a disappointing year last year. A couple of players that they have that are up and coming, that are interesting players. Obviously, LaMelo Ball is in the mix. You have Terry Rozier, once again, is a very, very good contributor on a team. But I'm kind of looking at it from the standpoint of they're looking to move Gordon Hayward, which Gordon Hayward going back to Utah, that's kind of interesting to me, trying to, get close to matching that money. You're going to have to make some other things work with it. Kelly Oubre is another player that could be looked at as a positive in this deal. So I think Kelly Oubre could be on his way there, as well as looking at a guy like James Bouknight, who didn't get a ton of run last year, but James Bouknight's potential is sky high. I mean, we're talking about a player that could be a high impact starter at one point. And he has the ability to take his game to a whole new level. Once again, didn't get to see a ton of him last year, but James Bouknight is a name that I'm going to be watching for on this trade market potentially, depending on where Utah wants to go with it. So once again, that would be Hayward, Oubre, Bouknight, and 3 or 4 first-round draft choices. That's, to me, kind of what I'm seeking that value at. I think they very well could toss in a couple of other items, maybe a couple seconds in there. But once again, the Hornets are a team that I'm for surely keeping my eye on. 100%, they very well could be in the mix, just considering with where they're at right now, kind of in a state of limbo. No more Borrego, bring in Clifford. I'm not exactly sure what this Hornets team is going to look like. This is obviously LaMelo Ball's team, but if you bring in a guy like Donovan Mitchell, have him play alongside of LaMelo Ball, that could be an interesting pairing moving forward. You have Terry Rozier, so you're going to be a little guard heavy in that regard. However, just bringing in a top tier talent via trade is going to be a big thing. We have to remember Charlotte's not a huge free agent destination, so however they're going to have to try to piece it together to make it work is what they're going to have to do. Now we have the Dallas Mavericks, and the Dallas Mavericks are a team that is more so a dark horse, in my opinion. Luka Doncic, Christian Wood, who they just acquired this offseason. I think those are a really, really good tandem. However, let's see if we can take it to the next level. In my opinion, if they're able to pursue a guy like Donovan Mitchell, big-time shot maker, go-to scorer, put him alongside Luka Doncic, that could be a very, very tough duo to guard, as well as having a guy like Christian Wood, really be able to score the basketball as well. So that triplet, I think that could be kind of insane, to be honest with you. Now, what's that compensation? What's that package have to look like? For me, I see this as, once again, there's not the high end trade ship in terms of a player going back. I think that Tim Hardaway Jr., who's a guy that very well could be rerouted, should be in the deal. You're looking at Spencer Dinwiddie, another player that could get rerouted potentially. So you have to think at those as potential trade assets, or maybe in a 3-team deal. It really depends how they kind of want to facilitate this. But once again, Tim Hardaway Jr., Spencer Dinwiddie, Josh Green, another player that is a developmental piece moving forward. I think he could have a nice, bright career. I'm kind of looking at it from the standpoint of maybe it's going to be 4 or 5 first-round draft picks. Dallas Mavericks are going to be a team that's going to try to extend Luka Doncic's window. They're going to try to give him all the help that he can, especially in his earlier years. They don't want him to leave ever in free agency, so they need to do whatever they can to push the chips forward, make it work for Luka Doncic. Why? Because you don't want to have a situation where you're just middling for years and years and wasting his prime. This is the time to go do it. This is the time to go chase a championship. When you have Luka Doncic absolutely in his prime right now, this is the opportunity for the Dallas Mavericks to go ahead, push forward, and make it happen. But that's another team that's kind of a dark horse. I think that when you look at the collection of teams that we have now, Which team is going to really move the needle the most? In my opinion, it's the Miami Heat. I think that does a lot of good for them. Being able to pair Donovan Mitchell, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo makes a ton of sense. They need some more scoring punch, with this offense. They're all traditionally they're a very, very good defense, very disciplined. However, offensively, there's times where it definitely lacks some punch. Now, Jimmy Butler in the postseason is kind of a different breed. However, they need another guy that they can truly go to in the closing moments of a game. Donovan Mitchell has proven that he can do that. To me, the Miami Heat make the most sense. A dark horse, once again, though, I think it's the Dallas Mavericks, just considering what they have on roster. They have a couple of tradable contracts that could make it work. They have some other younger assets. Hardy is another guy that, they were able to pick up in the second round, but already in the summer league, we are seeing that he was worthy of a first round draft pick. So we will probably see his value continue to rise and rise in terms of these trade discussions. Granted, it is only summer league, but we are seeing some things that I think people were kind of missing through that pre-draft process. They got caught up in the G League numbers, but when they weren't looking at the holistic picture, which makes it tough because he opted to go with the harder competition, go play in the G League, and then very well got stung by it. However, that's another name that I want to be watching for the Dallas Mavericks to potentially trade. And then finally, Josh Green, a nice developmental piece. Probably the best of the group here in terms of player that they could get in a deal. You have to look at it from the standpoint of, is it Tyler Hero? Is it RJ Barrett? Is it Ben Simmons? And it's really hard to kind of gauge Ben Simmons truly on, where does his value lie, after all this time. Tyler Hero continues to ascend as a star. RJ Barrett is really getting close to touching that star, potential. And I think that any one of those guys you can't really go wrong with. I think they're pretty equal overall in terms of where teams might be viewing them. Maybe Ben Simmons a little lower league wide than the other two, if we're just being completely honest, just with the whole state of the league. Some people really don't like him. Some people absolutely love Ben Simmons still. So it's all based on preference, and I'm not exactly sure where Utah's front office is fitting there. They realize the writing's on the wall. And, honestly, big changes are going to be made in Utah. I think Donovan Mitchell gets traded this offseason. Thanks again for stopping by. Greatly appreciate your support. Hit that subscribe button if you are new. Also, leave a like on today's video if you did enjoy the content. Have a lot of fun making these videos, and we will catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.